get down to business. Thanks for coming out tonight.
I wrote me a manual, a step-by-step booklet for you to get.
Oh, I make money move.
You can't see me, my time is now.
What up, guys? Welcome back to the Fitness Times Business Podcast, the show created to provide you with the practical and strategic advice to help you level up in fitness, business, your career, your relationships, and your life. My name is Joseph Mencel. I am your host, and I'm joined in this episode by Mr. Will Warren-Davey. What's happening, Will?
Thanks for having me.
Mate, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Fitness Times Business Podcast. Welcome to Massive Joe's headquarters, your first official visit here.
It is. It's been a
Guys,
while.
if you are wondering who Will Warren-Davey is, he is the owner of Primabolics, which is, well, man, I'll let you do the full intro, but Primabolics is a sports supplement company. Shameless plug for those of you watching the show as opposed to listening. I've just got a tub of Primabolics grinds.
I need to hire this man as a sales rep.
Literally in the front of my microphone here in the exclusive collab flavor, the Massive Joe's Red Frog. This is the stim-free pre-workout. It's a hugely popular product for us, Will. It's one of many products that you produce under the Primabolics brand. Listen, man, we have so much to talk about today. And I know that those of you listening and watching to the show are going to be so happy that you tuned into this episode, because Will has not just an incredible story about his business journey in the fitness space, because you didn't enter with Primabolics, right? You've done a few things. Definitely. You've done a few bits and pieces.
Very mixed background. Very mixed, mate.
Yeah, you've done a few bits and pieces to get to this point. And as always, when you kind of see a successful business, it's always the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. And you have a lot of glacier underneath the water that I want to kind of unpack. And then, of course, it would be a complete shame to have you on the show and not ask you specifically some supplement questions. So we're going to geek out a little bit towards the end of the show and just go full sup, full deep, take a deep dive into a whole bunch of sups, hormone stuff in particular, for those of you who are who are interested in learning that from Will. So, Will, look, I just want to begin, man. I want you to formally introduce yourself and give us a little bit of a backstory to Will Warren-Davey, a backstory to Primabolics. Let's hear your origin story, how you got into the industry, what you've done so far, how you got to where you are now, how you built this company from the ground up to where it is now. Let's unpack that.
Sure. Look, I think, like you said, tip of the iceberg in a lot of cases. So my background's very, very varied. I've had a lot of careers. I've done mining, I've done military, I've done hospitality, I've done a huge breadth, but the common theme behind it was training. That was always the mainstay. So I guess the most significant part of my career path was half a decade as an environmental scientist in mining. So I was a geologist and environmental scientist was my background. So completely unrelated. Went to uni, much like yourself, did the classic, this is what you do. You go to school, you go to uni. And I was in a mining region. So geology and environmental science, that seemed to make sense. Had a crack at that, got my degree, went out into the field and worked in very, very remote mine sites and exploration work. So I'd work basically solo. I'd go, 500-600 Ks inland, work by myself in just remote paddocks and back of these old mine sites and doing, collecting environmental data basically. But the real basis to that, the best part of my day in all those incredibly remote sites and spending hours and hours driving in, driving out and doing these really pretty harsh environments was always the end of the day going training. That was like the thing that was always what you'd look forward to. You do your 12 hours on site, you're busted, you're covered in mud, you're just absolutely wrecked. You get home, you're awesome. I get to go train now. This is brilliant. And I was very fortunate in that I was introduced to training by a bodybuilder as well as a mate of mine. And so from the very beginning, it was always like, as soon as you walk in the gym, here's a pre-workout. Yeah. Here's a post-workout afterwards. Look at your nutrition, count your macros. Like this was like really, I was so blessed to have that because so many people waste that initial newbie gain period where you can gain so much. Yeah.
It doesn't come back, man.
It doesn't.
You get one shot.
You get one shot and you can make tremendous progress out of it. And I got really hooked on it from that point on. So this became the overarching theme in the background, but never a forward presence ever. It was always just right in the back of the van. At the end of the day, this is my hobby. I love doing this. This is again, I look forward to this at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I started, and I'd always try and, base that was a big central theme. But, I guess that career-wise was very much, I graduated in a mining region in downturn. A lot of booms and busts in mining.
What years are we talking about here? You mentioned half a decade. When did you get in? When did you get out?
That would have been 13, 14. I would have graduated. Oh, no, it was much earlier than that, wasn't it? God, I'm getting old. 2012. 12, I would have, 2012 now.
Yeah.
Wow. That hurts to reflect. Yeah, 2012, I would have graduated and I did that period onwards. So actually, Primabolics started with me working full time as well for most of the company's genesis. Actually, most of this actually was until I could build the company to a point where it had enough of a product range and enough sales to actually justify me working under the brand. Yeah, I had to work. I started to pay myself. I had to pay bills. I had mortgages. I had same as you had to pay everything. So I continued to work that right through and. Primabolics started in 2015 was then, so it's just ticking over the 6-year mark this year. And throughout that time, what had happened was basically I had all these booms and busts in mining. So I'd have great periods where it'd be fantastic, and I was always a contractor in these sort of roles. So I'd go out, spend a few months in the middle of nowhere, come back, they put me on another contract, and essentially that all with this training as the background. Unfortunately, though, right towards the end of the contract, again, we kept having redundancies as a common thing. Downturn was really quite big in our region, and I thought, I'm just sick of being a number. I'm sick of just rocking up the site and just being, just punching the clock and just waking up, and by the end of it, just hating it. Like you're away from friends and family, you're away, you're hundreds of kilometers inland, very regional areas, and you just, like it just got to a point where you're just so expendable and you just really weren't significant and you weren't working towards anything.
What an incredible way though. I can personally resonate because one of the things that I did when I was still studying at the time and I'd started Massive Joe's and it was, very similar actually because I was running Massive Joe's as a side hobby while I was, finishing off engineering and finishing off my law degree. I was still studying at university. But then I started working once I graduated from engineering. And I graduated from engineering in, I'm going to say, let me have a look over at the wall because my degree's sitting up there, 2007. So 2008, I started working for a company called Santos, which is an oil and gas company.
Big company.
Big company, based here in Adelaide. The head office is in Adelaide. They've got an office in Brisbane, but one of their main areas is Moomba, out in the field in the middle of fucking nowhere in South Australia. They do Southeast Queensland and so on and so forth. And so I can resonate with this, man, because I can tell you from my personal experience, you never work as hard as you work on fucking site for a mining company, right?
Mate,
I remember, like when you say 12-hour days, it's like you clock on at fucking 6 a.m. and you work until 6 p.m. and you do it for 4 weeks straight, no days off, 7 days a week.
You do.
And you live in a fucking shit little piece of shit fucking
shipping container.
Shipping container. Yeah.
Some of the places, and it's always, it's an hour.
The food is horrible. And, and so anyway, to my point, I resonate exactly with where you're coming from. I know that a lot of the listeners, a lot of the viewers, have probably worked in mining as well and probably resonate as well. But my point is, what an incredible opportunity early on in your working career to really kind of fortify work ethic.
Oh God, yeah. That's a big theme. I was raised from day one with work ethic as the biggest value in our family was always work ethic.
Yeah.
And that's why I joined the army at 17, was in for 4 years in the reserves, and I did a lot more than you have a minimum requirement as part of your enlistment, but I always did a lot more courses with a lot more training and the same sort of thing that really drilled in and reinforced that. And through uni, I had 3 jobs as well as being in the army as part-time. Yeah. So between military and mining, well and truly drilled that in that it's, you turn up and you get it done, and that's the only way anything happens. But they're very fair, the sweat equity in mining and in military, because if you rock up and put in, it shows, right? But what I found, unfortunately, is that being this contractor role and drive in, drive out stuff, you didn't get that. That didn't resonate. You didn't really see a return on your effort, which is something that really it became harder and harder to back up over the years. So when I got made redundant for the last time, I mean, look, this is just getting stupid. This is this is hard. I'm getting nowhere in this career. That it seems like the industry's going up and down, and it's not a very certain future. I went, well, what's something I actually like doing? Because I'm really sick of waking up and dreading my alarm at 3 a.m, driving out of site, 12 hours on. Like they're 14-hour days every day.
Yeah.
I'm like, this just can't be sustainable. No one, I can't wake up and hate that alarm every morning. Like it's just, it doesn't matter how much money it is. I don't care. So I basically, once I got made around the last one, I went, okay, let's reassess. Let's pull back to baseline and go, I've done 3-4 different careers. I've had a good stint in all of them. I have, it's time to find something I can actually do for a period and actually really enjoy, because that was the theme. With like military, it has its fun parts to it as well. I was in infantry, and there was definitely some great camaraderie to it, and you build mates that I still talk to now years on. But again, there's a lot of hardship in it. Anyone who's been in for a long time, you just get sick of being yelled at, which followed through as a mining theme. So when I got made redundant, I went, okay, let's take stock of life and actually go, all right, what are you going to enjoy doing? What actually makes you happy in your day? And it was training. It was gym. Now, going back to the friend who had introduced me to bodybuilding, supplements was always a thing. Now, what I always found amazing about them was it was such a felt effect. If anyone's ever had recalls their first pre-workout experience, like you go back, the first time you have a pre-workout, that's something that gets burned into you. Like that the euphoric mood, that isn't something that you come across prior to.
Let me ask you a question. I know the true supplement users will be able to answer this question without even thinking. Your first ever pre-workout.
Oh, it's jacked. Straight up.
Straight up. Without even mine was BSN NO Explode.
Oh, NO Explode. I use that after, funny enough. NO Explode was, I found that later. And the old, with the grape flavour with the huge amounts of bicarb. So it was nice and fizzy. That was the
bomb. The top of your shaker straight off. Shit went all over the ceiling. That was good times.
That was good though. They were cluey there. That was because we saw supplements really transition from there, where it was those big mega dose serves. That was like probably a 15-gram serving size back then in the little red bucket tub.
To the micros with Jack 3D and 1MR. And
then back to the full guys now come full circle, and it's very cyclical, right? But that nostalgic period with the micro dosed ultra stim DMAA days, that was something that really put an impression in. But I've always been a bit of a geek with this sort of stuff, and I always wanted to know, like, well, what I'd try, say your Jack 3D, for example, then you try Mesomorph the next week, or then you try different ones, and I started experimenting, going, this feels significantly different to this one. What's the difference? What's happening here? What's going on? And it got me down the rabbit hole of reading more and more into what certain amino acids are doing, what certain, and going down the ideas of, what are these, what are nootropics? What are these things? What are branched chain amino acids? What are all these things do? And after a few years of going down rabbit holes just in my spare time, because this was the stuff I actually enjoyed whilst on site, just hating life, this was the stuff I was thinking about, was there going, oh, cool, I get to go home in my spare time, I get to read about this stuff, this is cool. And so you go down, and after, enough time of going down rabbit holes, you've covered a lot of rabbit holes, and you get to a point where you're like, this is interesting. So I started buying raws by the end of it, because at the time, it was in that transition from those ultra stim guys, and in that era, I guess it was very much like the Jekyll and Hyde sort of time. And I was looking for, when I'd read enough about this, I started realizing a lot of the stuff in the market wasn't dosed. It wasn't clinically dosed. 90% of it. Like, there was a lot of very big American brands with very big budgets, a lot of money going into marketing, but not a lot seeing on the panel. And I saw a massive gap there. I'm like, look, I'm someone who actually, I've really just fallen in love with these supplements, and I'm looking through, but now I've actually read into what I want to find on the panel. I can't find anywhere. Yeah, I can't see it. Like the pump agent at the time, I think it was Jekyll at the time, ProSubs Jekyll, for example, had 500 milligrams, half of 1 gram of citrulline. That was their pump formula. That was their low stim pump edition. And it was, and I'm there. I'm like, this is remarkable. Like there's such a big gap in this space. There's so few products that are offering what if you actually read about it, what you'd want to see on there. So I started, I started playing around with my own, adding raws to everything, because I couldn't find anything that was a complete formulation. And I'd have training partners over time, and I'd sort of show them. I'd be like, oh, look, give this a try for me and see what you think. And because no one had ever had a try of, back then they were running agmatine and arginine, but so when I threw in, I'd put in a good, 8 grams of citrulline in with my, a good 10 grams of creatine in there as well. Like, really dose these things up and have the raws separate. People are like, what is this? This is what's this?
It's actually working. It's
actually working. I actually have a pump.
It's not just a stimulant rush.
Yeah, it's not just a massive hit of DMAA. And so I saw this initial response. I was like, oh. people are responding really cool to this. Like, this is just a few mates of mine trying it, but like they're like, this is like reinventing their workouts. Like, these guys are actually having a really cool time. And I, at the time, become really interested in bodybuilding, and I competed not long after in the AMB in a natural federation there. And throughout that time, again, introduced more and more supplements throughout then, looking to sort of, manipulate parts of my cut. So, first it was just pre-workouts in my early introduction to training, and then we're looking at fat burners, and we're looking at sleep aids and things like this, and really getting into and having a lot of fun with it, and finding new compounds and reading about them, and and I just got hooked. I was like, this is amazing. Like, seeing your body, like introducing something new, seeing your body change, feeling something as well, like the felt effects as well, and I thought, this is cool. Like, if I can, this is the best part of my day, is getting to use these subs. So when that downturn came and I found myself out of work and I took stock of what was good in my life, this training, supplementation, this was the fun part. And because there was that huge gap I spoke about in the supplements, I mean, this is an area I can add value, and this is something I can do this well. Like, no one else is doing that. No one was using citrulline at the time even. Like this is really quite cool. And a lot of people listening to this podcast, they're very fortunate now. We have a lot of very well produced products, a lot of, very clinically dosed products on the market, but it was a very different landscape half a decade ago. Yeah. So basically, I thought, let's have a crack at this. And I got my local supplement store, who at the time I was buying all my raws separately. I was like, look, can you just put this all in a tub for me? Because I'm really sick of buying 10 bags of raws and always having to mix it. My car looks like a meth lab. I need to really get this, I need some help, Can you just do this for me? Yeah. So they did it. I bought it in a big bucket and I had there, and it was like a 24 gram serve, and it was awesome. I started showing friends, and they started going, wow, like, fuck, this is nuts. This is cool. And I thought, okay, this could be something. And I was using like my grind formula now. I made that 5 years ago. That was my first product. Was actually grind.
This one right here.
That was it. I didn't have, obviously, alpha size, alpha GPC wasn't floating around yet, so I didn't have some of the trademarked ingredients. Vaso 6 wasn't invented yet. Yeah. But the backbones to that, the gram of tyrosine, having in there the huperzine as well. Like this was half a decade ago. That hasn't changed. And so that was my sort of first attempt at a pre. And then I had a sort of more of a stim based one later on. But basically, the reaction was so strong because people were used to these big, American brands throwing out really, really well marketed but not well dosed products. Yeah. People, once they were trying this, were like, whoa. And I started out by, I would at this point I had worked casually for friends who mates of mine were like-minded. I'd met people along the way who were passionate about gym, and a few of them had started their own businesses, and they'd gone, I'm going to open a supplement store. They were equally passionate guys, and they started it. And I went, what's it take to, like, can this happen? Like, is it? How does it even work? Like, would you sell this for me? Like, is that even a thing? And they're like, oh, let me give it a try. And so I'd show them, and they're like, oh, we should. Like, once they had actually given out samples, they're like, we can range this. This is something I can work with. This is really cool. This is so different to everything else being made, and it's it's all done here. And there wasn't many Aussie brands back then. 5 years ago there was bugger all being manufactured in Australia too. So. The initial response, I went, hey, there's something here. There's really something that this could be a thing. So basically, a little bit of time went by with me sort of tinkering around, got this formula right, and me being sort of the 21-year-old hardcore bodybuilder at the time, I put out my first pre. I went, bugger it. I convinced at the time I was married, so I convinced my wife at the time to let me take out a personal loan, go to a manufacturer and go, can you make this? Can you make me a pallet of this pre-workout? It's called Bleed Out. It was this hardcore, literally, like the flavors were blood melon. It was all written, literally the lettering on the tub was written in blood. It was all hard, like a much different animal to what it is today. Yeah. And it really resonates with the real, blood and gut style training video, like really that era in a T. And put that, and I went, let's do it. Let's take a 20 grand loan out. At that time, I was only on 40K a year, 42K a year, working bit of piecemeal work between friends' stores casually, trying to gain experience on what the market was doing. So I worked in supplement stores, built up my knowledge on what the market had a look at what other formulas were offering and what they weren't, and started really put the hammer on it and went, let's pull the trigger, let's do something. Now I got my first pallet of pre-workout land. That was at the beginning of 2015, and one thing I didn't understand at the time was that formulations are all great, but one thing we don't know is whether it's going to be shelf stable. Yep. So.
Is it going to clump?
Is it going to clump?
Yep.
I'd taken out half my yearly salary in a loan, dumped it in one go on just one product as an all-out, let's have a crack, and it went rock hard. instantly. Like we're talking weeks in. I had every hydroscopic ingredient on the planet in this thing, and it just went like a brick.
Yep.
I lost an entire pallet, and the factory just washed their hands of it. It was a very small manufacturer at the time. I went, all right, wow, this is my introduction to business.
This is your first business learning lesson.
This is my first transaction.
It's funny, man. I personally, I had a similar one, not with producing products, but one of it's funny how these lessons stick with you, especially the early ones, right? I think because at the time when they happen as well, that $20,000 to you now in business, you probably wouldn't even blink about it. But back then, being half a year's salary, that shit hurts, right?
Oh, yeah, it stays with
hurts.
you.
Like I remember one of my first big imported shipments is I imported some BSN Synthesix. And
right.
I think for me, it was kind of similar. I reckon it was about 20 grand as well. And I was probably earning the same sort of money through the business at the time. And I didn't know anything about import permits. I didn't even know import permits existed. So I'd been importing like pre-workouts and intra-workouts and all of that. But this was the first protein shipment. Hit the border, comes through customs clearance. Where's your import permit? What are you talking about, import permit?
What's that?
They're like, oh, well, you don't have an import permit. Well, we're taking this and we're destroying it. And I was like, oh shit. And that was my introduction to importing dairy-based products and very quickly taught me lessons about import permits.
It's burnt, it imprints it, doesn't it, on you? And it
does, man.
But why doesn't it? What's bizarre that always stuck with me is why that didn't just put me down. Because like it should, logically, we should be risk averse. That's how we're evolved. We should, like we're designed, the human species, we're risk averse. We're designed for survival, right? And when we have these massively traumatic events and really significant burns, it should deter us, right? And I was quite, after that clumped and I was there and I'm like, all right, well, I've got a personal loan here that's going to last me 5 years. So, and I've got basically a pallet worth of just rocks that I can't move. What do I do?
Build a house out of it.
Yeah, make a small fort. A very stimmy fort.
Yeah.
I guess at that point I'd upgraded from working casually. I actually got there was an ad for Nutrition Warehouse at the time was coming to Newcastle. It was their first sort of store in our area. Yeah. Before that, it was all independently owned stores. Friends of mine that just decided to have a go, And they had a manager's position. And I was like, wow, you can actually make a full-time living in this. Like, there's a career in supplements. Like, that's even a thing. Yeah. I had no idea at this point. Until now, I'd just been sort of, playing around with this, tinkering with my own little formulas and just selling to mates. I'd sell half a dozen tubs and I'd buy a dozen tubs, and then, and slowly build up. Yeah. Anyway, after that clumped anyway, I was working with this, I sort of started, I applied for it and I got the job because at that point I'd done a fair few years of reading and formulating and playing around. And then it was, something they sort of sought after. So I got the manager's role here. And in that time when I started with them, it was 12 months that I did in that role. And that store nearly tripled in sales for it. But the really big difference was that, I guess, during that time, it reignited my sort of passion to go, let's have a crack at this. But it also showed me the same gaps before are still around. There's still a space here. There's still a way I can add something valuable to customers. There's still a way I can give someone. There's something that no one else was doing, And I'd always thought of things a bit differently. I've always been a big fan of herbs, and I love botanicals because, amino acids you might manipulate, a reaction or block an enzyme or do one thing. There's feedback loops on everything. So. Whereas plants, they would like botanicals would always cover your base in so many different ways. The same plant that might modulate cortisol will also improve thyroid activity, or they sort of take into account that feedback loop. So in terms of giving it to someone to try, if you want to make something, bring it to market, and have customers have actual big results, this was a really great way of doing it. But so I guess I saw this gap. Where this real mix of sort of the sports science and the real naturopathic herbs, and really blending this in together, looking at the hormonal aspect as well, and really, I had this really unique sort of product ideas and formulations at this point, and I went, all right, I've lost this 20 grand, I've burnt that, okay, let's start again, but let's do this, let's try and have a go. So working there, I had a great relationship with the team there, and so I over time I sort of developed, tinkered, and I finally got to a point where I went, look, let's have another go at this. And I in the background I'd had the demand sort of building with my friends' stores, and it got to a point where I actually ended up resigning at the end because it was getting a bit of a conflict of interest. I was doing a taste testing in a gym for NW on a Monday, and then that weekend I was going back doing a sale for Primabolics separately through another store, through our competitor. and thought, oh, look, this is probably morally, I should bow out here and, just have some integrity about it. So I bowed out. And on the way out the door, they're like, look, well, thanks for that. As a gesture, we'll put it on the website for you if you write 2 articles a week for our website for 6 months. Now, these had to be original articles. These had to be nowhere else on the internet you could find it. They had to be completely originally authored.
Yeah.
Everything had to be referenced, fact-checked. And I went through these. I ended up writing 52 articles for it to have it on the website. And I thought, hey, getting on the big box retailer's website, this is everything. Wow, they have all these stores. It's this massive website. It'll just crank. This is the start of my business. This will be massive. And so I'm thinking, like, beautiful. Yeah, I'll write these articles for you and stuff. And I'm going through and like, this is a big body of work I did for this, and nothing happens. Nothing happens at all. Not a tub goes. And I'm like, what? My formulas are better than everyone else's. Like, my panels are fantastic. No one's doing anything like this. They're unique products. They're great formulas. They're great value for the money that I'm charging. They're on the biggest website in the country in front of thousands of people a day, massive traffic. Can't sell a tub. What's this? This is really bizarre. And I went through. I went, you know what, bugger this. I'm gonna do this more in person. I'm gonna do this old school, and I'm actually gonna go more for the brick and mortar side. So I wrote my 6 months worth of articles, gave them 52 original articles. Went through and went, okay, give me a shot in store. I want to prove I can do this. They did a national special for me and they did it 2 months in a row, which they hadn't done for anyone previously. And I knew this was coming up. I went, okay, it's time to dig deep again, but go much bigger scale than last time, because I'm going. As a young kid, this is my first real attempt at big scale business. And I'm going, look, I need to have a lot of stock on hand. I need to launch all these products. This will be cool. And the special I did, this is how dumb I was. I did a free BCA, so my original intra-war, a free 30-serve intra-war with a pre-workout. And so if you look at the manufacturing costs in this, I gave away tens of thousands of dollars. But anyway, so I'm making stock for this going, look, this is a huge national special. Customers couldn't turn that down. It's a free pre and it's a free intra workout, a full month supply with a pre. This is going to kill it. I was just sitting there waiting for the dollars to roll in, and I'm going, okay, we've gotten it to a great point. I've gotten this in the biggest retail in Australia. I sync out, we go $250,000 in the red. We're buying tens of thousands of units of stock, gearing up. And me as a guy, again, on 50 odd grand a year at the time, going, okay, let's start, like, we're begging and borrowing from friends and family, from friends' grandmas and stuff, trying to get this money together to make this initial purchase to supply what I thought would be this monster sale in store, right? So we managed to pull off, just unspeakable sort of actions in terms of monetary lending and bad, loan principles. Went through, got it, boom. Got it store, again, didn't move.
Shit.
Dropped it.
Yeah.
And they dropped it straight away afterwards. They went, look. And
it's not working.
This is not working. No one knows the brand.
We could put some dates around this, Will. What year is this?
This would be 16, 17. Oh, it might even be, no, it would be 17, sorry. Probably 17, 18, I would say.
So you're 2 years in at this point.
2 years in. And I'd had a crack at it. And in that 2 years, I'd had debt already and buggered stock. Yeah. On top of that, then I'd had, this $250,000 in debt again.
So you're 2 years in and well and truly in the red.
Well and truly in the red. Haven't turned a dime. Still working full time to pay myself to be able to meet, bills and, this was brutal. I was doing Primer after hours. I'd go and, working in stores 9 to 5 to fund it. So the hours were obscene for that period. I don't even know how I really survived that period. Yeah. But yeah, worked full time the whole way through, did Primer on the side, would dispatch orders out of my garage for, literally until about 2 years ago or so. And yeah, that's how it went on repeat, growing store by store. And after that, after we got dropped by Nutrition Warehouse and I had pallets of stock there sitting there, which had been ready to go, I had all this debt and I'm just sitting there going like, wow, like this is, my introduction to business has been this destroyed pallet and just being punched in the face by a big retailer. Just, like, wow. And like now I look back, I go, oh, it makes perfect sense. There's no branding. There's no, consumer awareness of the product. It's a brand new product. No one knew what it was. It all of it makes sense. But to a young kid, who goes, wow, this is the whole thing.
Well, not even a young kid, Will, like anybody new to business, right? And this is why, I want to take some deep dives into your story, but I just want you to finish to get to 2021 before I go there. But this is one of the misconceptions about business, right? Is a lot of people who are new to business, who are green to business, expect to kind of come in and, put together this particular deal or that particular deal with whoever they're doing with, and things are just going to blow up overnight, right? Yeah. That's the expectation.
It is.
But it doesn't fucking work like that.
No, like it's never linear, is it? It's never...
I don't want to say never, because I can think of maybe one or two in my 15 plus years of business where I've seen it happen like that. But more often than not, it's unrealistic, right? You're going to get punched in the face, and then you're going to stand back up, and then you're going to learn your lessons, and then you get punched in the face again, and then you're going to stand back up and you get punched in the face again. And it's literally like just being continuously punched in the face.
It's very humbling business.
And you try and learn little lessons along the way so that maybe you can kind of duck and cover when the next fucking punch comes. But anyway, so we're at 2017.
2018, yeah.
And then what happens?
Well, look, and to flick through that next part, because what they did is it just changed my whole ideology.
Yeah.
I started realizing that where my strengths were, and the strengths were educating people as to what they should be expecting from their products that they are buying regularly, providing that solution. And more importantly, so what I spent the next 2 years doing really was I would just load up outside of my working in stores, I'd load up my ute, go for a drive,
Yep.
go visit stores in person. Here's a tub. This is what I make. This is why I make it. Rinse and repeat. Store after store,
Pounding the pavement.
Every single store I could find, I went to, and because I'd spent so long working in the middle of nowhere through mining. Places where other sales reps didn't go because it's not viable and so on.
And there you go.
Straight where I went.
Yep.
Because these guys, a lot of the.
You were like, fuck it, man. This was my introduction to my career.
Oh, this is my backyard.
I'm used to getting up at 3 a.m, driving 3 hours to get to site. Going to a store that's 2 hours out where no one wants to go is a walk in the fucking park.
This is joyous. This is
there
great.
You go. That's paid dividends for you in 5 years.
I did, and it was ironic because a lot of those towns I actually stayed in before as a contractor in mining and just hating it, and getting to come back to those towns on my own terms and visiting stores, my own product. It wasn't paying me at that point, but still just, as a concept going, I'll come back on my own terms. I'm not here staying in a crappy, demountable, hating life. I'm back here. I'm doing something that I love, and I'm doing it. I'm here on my own terms. I'm here to visit these guys, and I get to, go in and just talk about why I made something and why my business does what it does. And it was just such a turning point. So, and I'd go to these remote places. I'd go 5, 6, 8 hours inland and go find places that no one goes to.
Yeah.
And these guys had never seen. I had some stores that I work with that I still do to this day that they had never seen. They had been opening for a year and a half, and they'd never seen a sales rep before. They'd never seen a brand owner, let alone they hadn't seen anyone.
Yeah.
So when I go in, they're like, "Oh shit, who are you? Like, what? You're coming out here?" So, I worked with the smaller guys because I got burned doing it the other way and trying to go that way.
Yep.
So no, I'm going to work with people. I'm going to work deeply. I'm going to go real deep, and I'm going to go with people who, more the independently owned stores where I can actually, portray this passion, show them why I made things, educate on the formula and the actual product part, and go, no, look, this is why what you've been, this is why what's on the market. It hasn't been up to scratch for a long time, or this is a unique way of doing it. Here's a different thought process. Here's a different way to attack fat loss. Here's a different way to attack, sleep aid or muscle building. Here's a different perspective on all this.
Yeah.
Because I didn't come from this background. I wasn't an athletic kid or a sporting kid at all. I was very much the overweight geek sort of guy at school. I wasn't an athletic guy, so I came to this from a very different angle.
Yeah.
I came from a scientific angle, and when I came into it, I started straight away going, well, when I'm looking at the felt effects of products and supplements, I straight away was looking at the panel, and that's how I know who I work well with, and that's why we've done such great business in the past. I think is that I really vibed with that. I grew up watching your material, raw reviews.
I'm happy to hear that.
And seeing that where it was actually like what I've seen now, and it's enforced a whole generation of people now who are so much more aware. Like a lot of our listeners now, it's such a different level of what it was when we started, and certainly you started. And we're blessed with that because we've got this sea of people who are so eager to learn, and it's this era of information, and it's stuff that we never had access to. And so look, that basically I just rinsed and repeated, and I still did the exact same thing. I literally just get in the ute, load it up with supplements, and just go store to store to store. I do that all across Australia, and rinse and repeat for years, and that's me now. And
just one question before we dive in here, Will. What year did you go, you know what, this is my full-time gig now? I don't need to be working the jobs here and there to kind of pay the bills and that sort of thing?
It was only the start of last year, and it wasn't even full-time then because COVID took a big chunk out of that. So I had only been working, because until then I had that was pretty much that was the first time. It would have been started last year. So January 2020 was when I went, okay, I'm going to pay myself. And even then, I'd only give myself the 3 days a week. So like I said, I'd pay myself 3 days a week, but I'd end up working 7. And and ran it through. So that was when I was like, wow, I'm balling. Like, I'm actually taking something out of this business. Because till then, all this debt we'd started with and all this, all these products that had gone wrong and clumps, there was no profit existing. That wasn't even a concept. So it was very much just doing it for the love of it. And so finally went, okay, let's try it out at the start of last year.
Yeah.
COVID then gave me a bit of a wake up, but I went, no, let's double down instead. So when I should have gone, when I was going, oh, look, here's another punch in the face. Here's that whole COVID fun period. And so I was, again, gave a lot of people an excuse for an out, but I thought if I've gone this far and I've gone through, started a business $250,000 in the red, I've had, half a year's pay worth of stock clump before I even got it to market. About all this stuff happened. Surely if this is going somewhere, surely I can get through this next pit,
You haven't come this far just to come this far.
Spot on. And I went, all right, bugger it, let's have a go. So I actually used, funny enough, JobKeeper was a pay rise for me. A significant pay rise. Like, it was nearly double.
It was for a lot of people, man. You're not alone. You're not alone.
Because I think there's this big misconception that everyone who has a business is balling, right? Like they all think it. Everyone goes, oh, you got your own business, man. You're CEO of your own company. You must be killing it. But if they saw the back end of how a business starts the first few years, they'd be very humbled.
And man, this is where I want to go first and foremost, right? Because I've been much more conscious just recently about trying to tell my origin story with more detail than I have in the past, because I see, a lot of people it's the exact misconception, right? A lot of people kind of look at me, they look at you, they look at these companies and they think that it's like a fucking balling lifestyle and you just flipped a switch and you just decided to go in and then automatically the universe opens up and it's all fucking sunshine and Lambos, right? And it's just not the truth. So, you start Primabolics in 2015, right? And it takes you literally 5 years to get to the point where it's your full-time gig. I think that a big misconception, especially, those of you listening and watching who are thinking about going into your own business, right? Perhaps you've been doing a particular career for quite some time. Perhaps it's time to change. Maybe you've kind of had this little itch that you've wanted to scratch for a while and you just kind of want to do your own thing. Maybe it's a supplement company, right? Maybe it's an apparel company. Maybe it's, you're a lawyer and you want to start your own firm. You're an accountant, you want to start your own firm, whatever it is. I want you to really kind of talk through this. It's very rare that you flick the switch and you close your career door completely and open the door to business, and that's your full-time thing, right? Yep. I think that I went through it personally. You've been through it. I see it a lot with new businesses, is that there's usually this period where you're still working.
Yep.
And in your spare time,
you're working.
You're bootstrapping the business. Like you're pulling it from the ground up. And I think that, a lot of people think that I'm going to start a business. This is the line in the sand, right? Now I'm just starting the business and now I'm going to be fucking balling in business.
Yep. I quit Friday. I start my business Monday and it's all good. No, look, I think that's a good lesson, because it does have this, like, social media in particular has changed the perspective of what business is. I think I watched my old man grow up. He had his own business. He was a whip and saddle maker. So he made everything by hand. And I got to watch that growing up, where he worked for himself, but we were always dirt poor, because you'd see booms and busts. There'd be great periods where he'd sell really well, and but same thing, he'd get in, load his ute up, and go, drive to an expo or drive to event on, sell his stuff in person, telling people why. But I didn't see that we weren't killing it. I still saw that was still years and years of struggle, and they're only just comfortable now, sort of thing from it. After decades of raising a family on that boom and bust lifestyle. So I just came into the world going, that's what I modeled it on. I went, oh, okay, so you work really hard. Yep. Most of the time you don't get paid for it, but you get to live on your own terms. Yep. That's the more valuable part. I don't give a shit. Money's not a motivator. Money's shit, right? It comes and goes. Like, it's not an important aspect really if you look at it, because you see very wealthy people who aren't any happier. I've My income now is significantly higher than what it was last year, but who cares? Like, it doesn't make me any different as a person. Like, so I grew up watching that and seeing, but also how many years that took of just grinding at it. And so I always expected that, but I think that's changed now, because we've got such access to so many people who are killing it on paper, in theory. Yeah. The other thing as well, though, Will, is it's cool to be an entrepreneur at the moment. It is, isn't it? It's trendy now. It was a dead shit thing to do half a decade ago.
And man, listen, I go back to my grandparents, right, on both my mum's side and my dad's side, both did the business thing, did the entrepreneur thing, and it's fucking hard.
Oh, that's right.
You know, and like back then, like I remember growing up, like my thing was the education thing was like hammered into me because it's like, no, you don't want to do the business thing.
Don't do this.
You don't want to do the entrepreneur thing. Right. You
Yep.
need to do the career thing because that's the safe, you know, that's the guaranteed income. That's the work for somebody else. Let the other person take all the risk and you just, you know, you do the work and you get paid for it.
Bingo.
And then you can focus on other things like, you know, having a family, your hobbies, whatever the fuck else.
Isn't that
Like-
that's such a unique lesson there? Because I think that's so right. I think our parents' generation were so, I have older parents, they're nearly 70 now, but that generation is very risk averse. Coming from period, they lived through wars, you know, and they saw a lot of our, you know, people our age, their parents were sort of, you know, lived through the depression sort of thing, and I think they were that was drummed into you was, you know, do the safe thing, you know, like, and they stayed in jobs for 30 years they didn't like, and I mean. There's a fine act now, though, in that people are being encouraged to leave jobs the second they're unhappy with it. Yeah. That's the other thing. So we went from the parents' extremes where it was stay at a job for 30 years, you hate it, but you do it to raise a family. Yeah. Now it's, you know, bugger the family, don't worry about it. But if you don't like a job, leave it tomorrow. Do what sets your soul on fire. Great lesson in that do what does make you happy. I'm massive on that. That's because my whole reason for this is to do things on my own terms. But there's that. Like there still has to be some endurance of discomfort in things that you don't enjoy. There has to be because that's where you build the discipline of it, and that discipline serves you when the motivation wears off and you keep getting punched, and you got to actually get through this stuff. Like that. There's only being absolutely like, not every day you wake up still and go like, oh wow, this is awesome, but you do it. You know that's where it's like the most relevant lessons from bodybuilding come in through prep. You know, like very rarely do you wake up wanting to do that extra cardio, wanting to do that gym session, but you do it. And it all, you know, same in the military, same in mining, it just keeps reinforcing that you don't want to do it, but you have to.
Yeah. Man, we were just talking off camera. I get up at 4:30 every morning to go and train. You think I enjoy getting up at 4:30 every morning? I woke up this morning, it was fucking dark outside, cold, raining.
It was raining.
I was like, man, I don't want to get up and go train.
Like this.
But you fucking did it, right?
You got to.
This is, you know what, a couple of just strategic practical tips that I want to give to the listeners and the viewers. The first thing is, if you are kind of in this position where you've got this itch that you want to scratch, right? You want to go down the path of entrepreneur, but you've built this career, you know, you've got this income, you're working this job, so on and so forth. You've got responsibilities that come along with that, perhaps they're family responsibilities, financial responsibilities, so on and so forth. I really encourage you guys to mitigate the risk in the fact that don't completely close that door and think that door has to be completely closed in order for you to open the door to entrepreneurship or in order for you to open the door to running your own business, right? There's going to be a period where you just have to do both, right? You have to keep working to meet your financial responsibilities, your family responsibilities, whatever that looks like, just to earn enough money to get by. And then between 6 p.m. at night and 1 a.m. in the morning, that's when you work on your passion project. That's when you work on your business. There is going to be this period where you just have to bootstrap.
Yep, and it's I think that's the most valuable and humbling part of it though, because that the longer you spend in the trenches on that part of the business though, the more thoroughly of it, and the more, because what I think is the most valuable part of that first few years was, for me at least, was having to do every single thing myself, design the labels, do the formulations, do the, you know, source the packaging, go through, like physically delivered. I mean, I had a period during COVID where we couldn't even have freight services, like, you know, to a lot of our stores. So I drove it. I just was my own courier as well. Yeah. And like it was only January this year that I brought on, a warehouse manager to help finally pack orders while I was away. Because I used to go out, I'd drive the 8 hours inland, do a seminar or do talks there, or, you know, show them my products. And if they place an order, I had to drive back and post it. Yeah, I don't know what else in, because you don't have staff. You know, like it's such
you don't have profit to employ staff.
No, you can't. So you do everything yourself. But that in itself is not something to shy away from. That's the most valuable part of it all. Once you get in the trenches and do every part of your business and understand it thoroughly, when you are fortunate enough to have the revenue to hire someone, and you already know intimately what their job title is, what their job role involves, and you've done it first, it's a different kind. One, it allows you to tell them how to do it, you know, to the best of their ability, and two, it's showing that you've done it before. Like you can go, look, I do this for years. You know, like I packed every single box for years, invoiced every single thing. But, you know, every tub, and there was thousands a month going out, I'd put it in a box by hand, taped it by hand, and driven it in times to stores. So yeah, you've got to do that period. And if you jump your ship and burn your bridges, a lot of those bridges like when I worked casually for, they're the stores that I sell in now.
Yeah.
You can't burn it.
It's all opportunity, man.
Yeah.
It's all opportunity.
Yes.
I want to talk about, in the situation where I get hit up a lot, right? Where people are like, I don't really enjoy what I do. I'm just doing a job, but I'm not really sure what I'm passionate about. I'm not really sure, to take the words out of your mouth, what sets my soul on fire. Your story was kind of like, you just started dabbling in what you were interested in, right?
Yeah.
You kind of got to the gym, started training, started taking products.
Yep.
Found that quite interesting, went down that rabbit hole, as you said, and you become pretty good at getting down rabbit holes. And, what advice would you give to people who are in this situation where, maybe they've been doing a certain thing for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years even, and they're just at a point where they're not really happy, but they don't really know what they want to do?
Yeah, gotcha. I think some of the most successful businesses I've seen, colleagues or friends of mine start, it was already under their nose. If it's something you enjoy, you're probably already doing it. Yeah. Chances are. If you're asking that question, what do I enjoy doing? Chances are, if you like doing it, you're already doing it. So look at your current lifestyle, take stock. What part of your day do you really like, or month, or year? What is it that really gets you going? What is it that you actually enjoy out of that part? And what would you do if you didn't get paid? Like if you didn't, for me, if I had a day off, gym and a supplement store, that was my favorite day off. I'd go and I'd go geek out in a supplement store with a friend of mine behind the counter, and I'd go get a sample of something new to try, get a new pre-workout or something, or a new intra, and then go train. That was that's what I'd do if I wasn't paid. So to me, it was a bit of a no-brainer, but I just didn't know there was a career available in this space. I didn't think you could make money out of doing something around supplements. I was like, this is like what? So it might not always seem obvious at first. I had to create that job for myself because this isn't a job that comes along often. Like you don't, so I had to create it, but it was there. So I would say to those people who are watching, going, what do I want to do something I like, but like, what do I, what's that purpose? I listened to a great podcast on this with Ben Pekulski recently. Same thing. It was asked, how do you find your purpose? It's already there. You already do. If you enjoy it, chances are you're already doing it. It's just, and just change the frame of mind because we've all been conditioned pretty strongly to follow that mindset of, grow up, go to school, get a good steady job, hold that down. That, house, wife, a picket fence, get a mortgage, blah, blah, blah. It's all pre-programmed. It's all, I think you've just got to change your mindset and go, okay, I'm probably already doing it. If I like it, I've probably already done it previously, or I'm doing it currently. Now, what does that look like if I make that into something? What can I offer in that space? What could I do that someone else isn't already? And then go down that rabbit hole and look at that.
It's interesting because a lot of the time it's just leaning into what you're curious about. Leaning into what sparks your curiosity, what piques your interest. And I think that a lot of the times it's almost that people kind of look too hard because they're immediately thinking entrepreneur, business, what's going to make money?
Yes. Which that's a point. Money, right? Yeah. Anyone who starts this for money, anyone listening who's starting this for money, stop and start again and rethink your purpose because you will burn out well before the cash comes in. And that is not that's not an adequate fuel source to get you through what you're going to have to go through to get there.
Well, and this is the thing where it kind of leads into the next thing I wanted to talk about, right? Because if you had done this for money, when you lost that first 20 grand, you would have checked out.
Yeah. And then when I lost the next quarter mil, I would have checked out again.
Quarter of a mil, you would have checked out, right? Yep. And this is, it's one of the things that I say so often and people kind of think it's a bit of a cop out. They're like, yeah, but you have to make money to stay in business. Yes, you have to make money to stay in business. But if your primary reason for starting a business is purely financially motivated, as soon as you get the first financial setback, you're checking out.
You're done. Yep.
And you're out of the game.
And you're looking at it from a different frame. As soon as you see, because you've set your metric straight away to be your success is measured on your income, on the revenue from this business. Yeah. That's your metric. That's your yardstick. So as soon as your business doesn't start generating sales, as soon as your business, isn't as profitable as you thought, as soon as it's not paying you, you're in your head, your metric for success, you've already failed. And so you've got to really frame it from a different angle. I had no business background really, with this stuff at all. It was just a guy who liked training. So when I started this, money wasn't even a thing. I never expected to be able to pay myself. Like I always thought this would just be a cool, fun hobby to make a pre that people would enjoy or make and then that sort of just evolved over time. But if you go in and go, I'm going to do this to be a baller, you're not going to last and you'll think that the whole way along, your frame will be wrong because you'll be judging your success on something that, I mean, if people saw the back end of businesses and you know what the reality is for a long time, it's not what you see on socials. You know, it's not. It's really a lot. Like there's a lot of highlight reels being flung around, but no one's showing the low light. Great deal where you're working the hours and you're doing the very uncomfortable things that you don't get paid for. Yeah. So I think that's very valuable that you touch on that side of things. So we don't just chase the money with this angle. You know, find what you like.
You're gonna be in for a really rough ride if that's your key motivator for starting in entrepreneurship or for starting in business. I think it's quite interesting as well. You know, you mentioned in your story that you know when you really kind of committed to the business full time and you kind of were like, you know what, I need to exploit these opportunities that nobody else is looking at because it's too hard, it's too difficult, it's too far of a drive, it's going to take too much time, I can't be bothered, whatever the fucking excuse is. And you kind of spotted these opportunities that your competitors really either weren't looking for or had seen and kind of wrote them off as, you know what, we're not going to do that for whatever reason. And you really kind of squeezed the juice out of those opportunities. Talk me a little bit through the mindset behind that, because I think that especially starting in business, that is something really, really important. And especially your kind of experience in the first few years, right? Because you had that experience with a big retailer that you were like, you know what, this is the opportunity of a lifetime.
Yep.
You know, like this is the opportunity that supplement brands that have been around for 20 years are getting. This is my shot.
Yep.
And it didn't work.
Yep.
And then you've gone to the complete other end of the spectrum and you're like, you know what, I'm going to look at the opportunities that no one else is looking at. And that's where I'm going to find my niche, and that's where I'm going to squeeze the juice out of, and that's really where I'm going to start building my business.
Exactly, because once I shifted that frame again and flipped it and went to literally the polar opposite model, went to Mara and Pa stores, brick and mortar, and just, you know, usually it'd be a guy just like myself who's just, you know, really loved training, super passionate about training and sups, and usually competed or just loved it, you know, and they loved it so much they thought they had the same thought process. I'm going to start this regardless of whether it's a money spinner. I just want to do this for my job, and they'd start stores and I'd approach them. I think the same logic that answered your last question is what put me in this space. I didn't care about money was the thing in this part because I was used to being broke. I was always broke. You know, I've been anyone who wants to.
Hey man, this is one thing that I'm big on. When, you know, a lot of people say started from the bottom. There's a difference between starting from the bottom and really starting from the bottom. And when you've really started from the bottom and you're not afraid of fucking losing everything because you've been there, you actually have nothing to lose.
Oh, you don't care anymore.
No.
And it takes away that massive, you know, everyone puts so much value on it. And it's just, when like entire life been broke, you know, because I've lived in booms and busts when I actually graduated throughout uni, was just working casually to get me through studying. You know, like it's always just been booms and busts with income. There's never been any stability to it. So I just let go of it as a value thing anymore. Yeah. I started looking at other areas. And I think that's what prohibited those bigger companies from doing what I did, because if you looked at it, it didn't really make commercial sense what I did. If you look at a company, a lot of them are based in Sydney, say, right, or capital cities, to pay a sales rep on the wage that they're on to drive 7 or 8 hours, pay them car, fuel, accommodation, meals, to go and visit one store that might be 600 Ks inland.
Doesn't make business sense.
Not commercially viable. Yeah. But I wasn't trying to be commercially viable. I didn't give a shit about money. Yeah. So that was my advantage. I straight away went, technically it's dumb to drive to Dubbo this morning and go chat and try and do a taste testing at a gym, like just a taste testing one. You know, like sure, if this was someone else, I wouldn't do it. If this was paying someone else, I wouldn't do it. But because it was me and I was just doing this for me, and I didn't, that was part of, in my head, I'm going, no, this is growing my brand. This is more people trying my products that I've put out, that I've formulated, more chances to show more people. It made perfect sense. I just did it. But the going back to that, the motivation was different. That's where those niches presented themselves, was framing it differently. If I had looked at it like from a money game, if I'd walked into it and gone, I'm going to start a business to pay myself, I wouldn't go, well, logically, I'm not going to burn all this money to go out there and with accommodation and fuel and drive out there for one store. So I think what it was having that different frame, like just not valuing, not doing it for the money made it a lot more obvious sense. A combination of not, you know, going the opposite on that, the bigger model, changing models, and then really not, you know, shifting the frame on how I looked at things. It allowed me to get into places a lot of other places wouldn't bother historically, but they were the most appreciative. because they had no attention ever.
Yeah.
For that exact reason. No one had gone out there. No one's given them love. No one's, gave a shit about them really.
Yeah.
So when you did, it was that it was such loyalty and such, we did cool things together.
Yeah.
I've done some awesome stuff with these stores, really unique projects that bigger companies aren't doing, because it's I'm in that beautiful place where you can be flexible and you can pivot and you can do cool projects like this where we do collaborative flavors.
But that's a great example, right? Is like your company was the first Australian brand in the history, and we've been working with Australian brands since 2005, man. Right? You were the first company that was like, you know what? Let's do an exclusive flavor. Let's put your logo on the tub. Because the other companies, not going to do it. That's not an opportunity we're interested in. That's another prime example.
So because maybe it's not. They might go, maybe viability thing is a risk thing, or it's
maybe it's not viable. Maybe they're just not looking. Like this is the thing. One of the stories that I tell when I first started the Massive Joe's business, and one of the opportunities that I exploited that my competitors, much bigger competitors, you mentioned one of them, there's a few of them, especially at that time, 2005, 6, 7, 8 through there, social media. They just weren't looking.
Yeah.
They weren't looking, and I guess, right place at the right time. But I was also looking at, I don't have the money to open a retail store, so I can't do that. Right at the start, I didn't have the money to start a website.
Oh, God,
so the first place that I sold was eBay. I was the first person in this country to sell supplements on eBay because no one else was looking.
Yeah, wow.
They were selling on their websites. I couldn't afford a fucking website. So what I do? Okay, I'm going to go and use a third-party website to go and sell. And then all of a sudden, everyone comes in, right? The Facebook situation at the time, you can't. Facebook is for university students, right?
Yeah.
College students to interact. High school students. That's just it's a social networking app. No one's going to be interested in selling supplements, advertising supplements on Facebook, and they just completely missed it. Where I was like, "Fuck it, I'll do it. Let's go." Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube. You can even now TikTok. It's the same shit. You just have to. Very early on in business, it's super, super important to look at those opportunities, look for those opportunities and exploit those opportunities that the bigger guys are just either noticing and just completely disregarding or just aren't even looking for in the first place.
Yep.
You have to milk those opportunities. But then if you want to be all time in business, you have to keep that mindset as you get bigger.
Yes.
Right? Because as you grow, you're going to start going, I'm not interested in those opportunities anymore. And you start making the mistakes that the big guys made when you came into business.
Yep, and you stop being as creative and you stop thinking outside the square on these things because you are part of the square then.
Absolutely.
You hit a scale and you are the square, and
Absolutely.
you've got and the thing that got you to be the square was thinking outside of it, and that's a really good point. You've got to keep on your toes with it, because I find that I hate it when things are stable, because I'm used to so much instability historically, so I really thrive in it, and I have my best work when I'm under pressure, but I suck when we're going well. I really, really suck when things are cruisy, things are ticking over. This is probably the first time in my business history where that's getting nearly resembling that, and you go, you get complacent. You haven't got that same fuel. When you're uncomfortable, you drive hard. When your back's against the wall, you've got nothing in the bank, but you've got to somehow bring revenue in to try and stave off liquidating. Those are the times when you really you go, okay, I've got to do something. I have to do it, and I have to do something no one's done to try and to get something in the door. And when you don't think that way when it's all honky dory and it's all sunshine and roses. You're just like, okay, cool, another day, another dollar, just let it tick over. Yeah. But you'll never make anything unique, and nothing will really stick out then. So I really like it when it's in periods that are, if it's a bit of a quiet time or a downturn, because that's when I did my best work.
It's funny, right? Because we talked about punches in the faces when you get started in business, right? And when you start in business, this is my experience at least, right? Is when you start in business, you try and avoid the punches in the face. Like, they're coming, right? The first time you're just completely unguarded, smack right in the face. You stand back up, then you duck and cover a little bit, but you still get hit. You're trying to avoid them. As you kind of get deeper into business, and as you kind of get into the 5-year circle, the 10-year circle, the 15-year room, the 20-year room, I'm not there just yet, but soon, it almost flips. And I'm kind of at the point now where, like, I look forward to getting punched in the face, because I know that that's going to knock any complacency the fuck out.
It wakes you up, doesn't it?
It wakes you up, you know, and I talk about, you know, we're still very much in the vice grip of the pandemic at the moment worldwide. But I talk about 2020 because that was really, you know, fingers crossed, at the peak of the pandemic. And I look back on it and I go, you know what? That was really fucking hard. But I'm so grateful for the punches in the face that I took in that year because it knocked it knocked any sort of complacency that I had to fuck out, and it humbled me more than anything could possibly have humbled me at this point in business.
Oh God, yeah.
You know,
it really
and you
put
look,
us-
but you look forward to that, Will, because you go, you know what? Fuck, I'm trying to get to the next level, and you look back on it, and you're like, what was I like? I was complacent.
Yep.
You know, I wasn't crossing my T's. I wasn't dotting my I's. I wasn't making the most of the 1%ers. I was the big guy that was overlooking those opportunities that when I first started in business, I would have killed to go and squeeze those opportunities.
Yeah. And I think that's the last year gave us all a chance to either one, bow out.
Yep.
If you weren't in it for the right reason, you tapped out.
Yep.
That was most of the times, right? So anyone who's just along for the ride, any tourists, they would, you know, that bowed out there. And fair call. That was actually quite a nice bit of universal karma going, you know what, guys, you know, if you want to now, we'll actually support you on the way out the door. Thanks for coming. Cool. This is your chance to go back to normality and just, you know, live a normal life, and that's fine. Then there was the other small percentage which I saw, and being in the network that I chose to target now of people who are, you know, just literally, you know, independent operators and who had just did this because they were passionate. Those are the ones that put the fight up, and they turned around and went, all right, well, everyone's fucked, but let's have a crack at this and see how can we do this differently? How can I make money when gyms are closed for 6 months? How can I sell supplements in this particular environment? How can I pivot?
Yeah.
That pivoting was incredible. I saw some amazing shit done. You know, you had stores that get more changes inside a business structure than you'll see in years happened overnight. You know, they go from being a complete retail outlet to closing down, doing online more so, and then delivering personally, becoming like delivery drivers in cases. You know, we did a way bigger focus on Instagram and social media and doing, you know, a lot of my seminars I did, you know, on Instagram Live instead, or do with, you know, it made us so goddamn creative because it put such a fire under us because we had to, you know, like it pulled down all the comfort, it took all the bumper rails off. You know, you were screwed if you didn't adapt, and I needed that again at that point. It was something that I think a lot of people got that real, they got so creative, and I just love seeing how robust and how much it made people pivot so much faster than you normally would. It's this weird period where like almost anything could happen.
It's a time warp. We were talking about it when you arrived today. It's like the time warp of 2020.
It was such a weird year, but my God, it was so remarkable. People changed more about their businesses, their personal lives, their everything in like that, you know, several month lockdown they did in decades. Like it was
at least 5 years condensed into 1 year in terms of like speed of change.
Oh, it was a phenomenal rate of change. And like for people in business, you see a lot of change, you know, anyway. So we're more, you know, you can become averse to it, but that was pretty remarkable. But yeah, I think seek that discomfort sometimes for the big gems, to see those niche opportunities you might have missed.
Yeah, it's super, super important, man. And I think we've kind of given some advice to people who are new in business or thinking about getting into business or are kind of green in the business realm. But we do have a lot of listeners and a lot of viewers who, you know, maybe they're in the 5-year room, like yourself, maybe they're in the 10-year room, 15-year room, 20-year room, whatever it is. You know, I think that the best piece of advice that we can give to those of you listening is do what you need to do to seek discomfort, to seek those punches in the face, because there's no better way to keep you complacent, there's no better way to eradicate complacency. There's no better way to keep you humble, and there's no better way to keep that mindset that was so valuable to you when you first started, because you were willing to do what other people weren't willing to do. You were willing to see opportunities that other people weren't willing to see. And I think if you can keep that mindset as you get into those rooms throughout your business career, your entrepreneurial career, that's just going to make you so much more successful over the long term.
Gives you that edge. It gives you an edge over your guys who otherwise were getting comfy, you know.
Yeah, 100%. Let's flip gears, because I want to spend a little bit of time supplement geeking out with you.
Yes. This is the fun stuff. This is the fun stuff. Like, I've always been a fan of what you guys have done better than anyone in the game.
Thank you, man.
You started looking at panels early on in the piece. Well, before anyone else was really making it a big part of their business and making a big part of their whole ideology was looking at the nutritional panel and going, what are the active ingredients? What's this formula? And explaining it to people. Yeah. So much education and value came out of that. And that was what you guys brought to the game as a point of difference, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's why I wanted to bring it full circle when we're doing this episode today. And initially it was going to be pretty much all business as we were chatting out before, but it would be bringing it full circle and going, let's geek out on the subs. Let's give people some fun stuff.
We're going to go like 15 minutes or so. You have kind of, speaking of niches and little opportunities, you've kind of niched out recently in really kind of the hormone side of supplementation.
Definitely.
Particularly adrenal support, particularly looking at thyroid function, cortisol, low testosterone in men, high estrogen in women. And you're really starting to, especially in your product development, we've spoken about Grind and a lot of the listeners and viewers will be probably more familiar with Grind from Primabolics than any other products.
Yeah.
But you guys are really kind of going into that space. You've got Restore, you've got Primal Test. You're really kind of moving into that hormonal space. So, I mean, let's go hormones. Let's go. You're trying to improve body composition. You're trying to improve performance. Maybe trying to build a little bit of muscle, lose a little bit of body fat. What role do hormones play? What can you do to optimize your natural hormonal environment to help you reach whatever health and fitness goal you're trying to reach?
Gotcha. Because everything's downstream of them, right? As a young bodybuilder, I was always about the, how can I tweak my macros, nutrient timing, cardio? It's all about those variables. They were the levers I was pulling. And as I got further down the track, I realized those were more and more, they're the smaller levers. The big lever you can pull is in the hormonal optimization space because everything's downstream of that, right? So like a lot of people, for example, if you're chasing fat loss, we'll pick that as the thing. So you're chasing fat loss right now. Let's say you're doing the classic thing, enter a calorie deficit, increase output, drop down food. Cool. Yeah. Now, what if we look at, and increasing our everyone jumps straight to a treadmill the first time we hear fat loss. We're going straight increase cardio, right? Let's say that's, even in elite athletes, your activity might be 20, 30% of your daily output in very active people. More of the time it's 10 to 20% of your calorie burn is from exercise, right? The other 80 to 90% is your BMR. Just the calories you need, just the calories consumed just functioning as a human organism is the big piece of the pie that no one's looking at. Similar to the business examples, right? No one's looking. Everyone's looking at, let's do a bit more cardio and let's drive a bit more. Let's tweak our macros over here. This is the little stuff. The big stuff is the basal metabolic rate, which is optimized by your thyroid function. And that thyroid function is inextricably linked with how stressed you are and therefore how your cortisol is looking. How's your hormonal profile? If your androgens aren't optimal, if your testosterone is low, if your estrogen is too high, what are these things all doing? They're doing massive things to the big pie. We're here trying to really look at putting all the attention into the tiny piece that's moving 10, 20%. So when I wanted to get some real changes in people, my point of difference was very much going, hey, let's go after the big stuff and see what happens. Let's get this, let's change people's mindset and try and go, instead of focusing on how many, can I do an extra half hour of cardio today? Why don't I go, hey, how's our thyroid function? What's happening there? How's our metabolism actually functioning? One, do we have all the nutrients we need for our thyroid to actually function? How's our stresses? How are we sleeping? How's our stress hormones looking? How's our cortisol? All these things impact massively that bigger piece of the pie that no one's looking at. So when we're looking at driving, let's give them a few tips on fat loss and on muscle building and so on. I would say bit less attention on this stuff, on the cardio, the macros, the training. It's all a very important part of the picture. That has to happen, the diet and exercise. But I would say as well, let's pay attention to things like going down the stress angle, sleep quality. That's probably one of your best metrics for your body's health and how it's running, how your nervous system is holding up to how crazy our modern environment is. Like so many people we never evolved to deal with how society is now. We like if you look at cavemen, human, how we actually evolved and how our physiology evolved, it wasn't made to deal with the huge amount of environmental insults we have now between stress, pollutants, chemicals, cosmetics, BPAs, plastics, between having so many commitments on all fronts, never switching off, all these stressors on our body, all these things that are coming in our everyday hectic lifestyles we're leading. our physiology is sort of at ends. It's going like, well, how do I deal with this? And when we're seeing so commonly in my travels, I'm seeing all the time, we're seeing hormonal imbalances like, polycystic ovarian syndrome. We're seeing endometriosis. We're seeing low testosterone in young guys, like really young guys. And, like the guys in their 20s and stuff who are getting blood tests with low test. And you're like, it doesn't, you go, oh, how can this be? It's because you're stressed out of your brain, but you don't understand because you're redlining, but it's background noise. You're having a gram of caffeine a day. You've got, work commitments, relationship commitments. You're training twice a day. You're not eating enough as well. You're eating macros and not the micronutrients as well. All these factors, right? So when to answer your question, when they're saying, how do I burn some fat or build some muscle? I'd say let's put a lot more attention into how's this looking? Stress. That's the big one. I've made my life's work in the last few years, really making people aware of how their body's dealing with the how often are they elevating their cortisol? How much of an impact is stress having on their body? And I guess giving them real time metrics. If you go home tonight, we listen to this one here, you're going home after work. How long does it take you to switch off? Is a big one. If you find that when you sit down, your head is still racing, even if you're physically exhausted, but you're still tired. But you're physically tired, but you're mentally wired. You lay down, head hits the pillow. You can't stop worrying about the day. Your head just won't switch off. Throughout the night, you might be waking up a few times to go to the bathroom. You wake up in the morning, you're feeling tired and you're dragging your ass. You're really relying on that morning caffeine hit to start the day. Yeah. Foggy headedness, poor short-term memory as well. If you've got real goldfish memory, if you're multitasking but not finishing any one task, all these things are signs that your body's running on red line. And, our body's cortisol we're constantly putting out cortisol because our body's always thinking we have all these, insults to deal with. So when I'm giving them tips, it's actually it's usually put the brakes on with people. People come to me and go, oh, I want to lose weight. I'm like, okay, what are you doing? They go, oh, I'm doing, like these hours of cardio. I'm eating bugger all. I'm doing all this weight training. It's awesome, isn't it? I'm like, no, let's do this. It's actually usually I reverse diet them out of the cardio and out of the food. Like we get them, eating more and trying to, wind down some of these outputs, finding their life where the stresses are and trying to, where we can mitigate them. If not, try and supplement them, and that's why I made hormonal products, because I used to just say, look, stress less. And then I realized that doesn't work anymore, especially after last year, we got a real rude shock on that front. So everyone's, people are very wired. So I thought, okay, I need to make something that people can use as a tool for this. There's heaps of lifestyle hacks there, like, waking up and getting sun exposure, classic one. Yeah. There's actually a nuclear clock that sits, it's funny enough, it's in the roof of our mouth. And what it does is as soon as we get light exposure in the morning, apart from our pineal glands behind our eyes actually giving us that switch off from melatonin to serotonin and getting us going and starting that sort of cortisol surge and give us the energy for the day. That's the big important part of it. It also sets our clock for when our bedtime will be as well. 12 to 15 hours later, it'll set your clock for then. So a big part of helping people with fat loss and muscle building is getting consistency in the wake times and sleep times and shifting exercise to mornings. Now, this is something you've done, Henry.
I have.
You have. You've
over the last 18 months or so.
You've shifted.
I was a nighttime trainer for... Oh man, over a decade. Huge. Over a decade. Wow. I used to train after work and, as what happens in business, just to flip back to the business side of the episode, you're working later. There's more responsibility. There's more on your plate. And I got to the point, where I would train after work, but there'd be some days where I would be in the office until 8:30, 9 o'clock. So by the time I get to the gym, it's 9:30, sometimes 10 o'clock. I used to have a saying, I do my best work after 10 p.m. And it wasn't in the bedroom, it was the gym because of this, right?
Unfortunately.
But, so I've spent 12, 14, 16 hours in the office. By the time I get to the gym, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, I'm exhausted. So what do? Take a high stim pre-workout.
Bingo.
Right? So at least I can get my workout in, right? I get my workout in. I'm done by 11:30 midnight. Go home, have my post-workout meal. Try to get to sleep, can't fucking sleep.
Of course not.
Because I've exercised intensely, so my metabolism's elevated. I've had a shit ton of stimulants 2 hours before, so my cortisol's jacked.
Yep. You've had cortisol.
I've just had a big meal. So, I got to the point, man, where I would sleep, if I was lucky, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd be up, I'd be up at 7. Right. So I'm sleeping 4.5, 5 hours a night. Crazy, right. Man. I wake up. What do I do when I wake up? I'm fucking exhausted because I've only slept 4.5, 5 hours.
Dump stims.
And it's been shit sleep. It hasn't been REM sleep, right? It's been really light sleep. So I get up first thing, straight to the sup pantry, grab myself some stims.
Yep.
Get my day started. And it's just this vicious cycle. And I got to the point where I was like, man, for me, it was really kind of related to my competing goals as a men's physique athlete. I'm like, man, I'm a fucking IFBB pro now. If I want to take my physique to the level where it's going to qualify me to compete on the Olympia stage, this is not congruent with that goal.
No.
This is not going to work, right? I'm going to hit this glass ceiling with my physique. I'm not going to progress. So I got to the point where I was like, nah, I got to change this shit. And so I did, so about 18 months ago, I completely flipped it. Now I train first thing in the morning, get up at 4:30, have my pre-workout meal at the gym, 5:30, get my workout in first thing in the morning. At the moment, I'm not using any stimulants. So I'm training stim-free completely.
What an impressive change of look at this change
completely
of times, isn't it?
flipped. And just to add some real world evidence to what you're saying, my physique has progressed more in the last 18 months than it probably has in the last 5 years. Just from a physique perspective, I feel better during the day. I'm more productive at work. I'm able to do better work in my business. Like literally my life has completely leveled up just by making that change from training late at night to training first thing in the morning.
And it's something that people, I guess, will become resistant of at first, but it's like, that's probably one of the big life hacks.
Man, it was fucking horrible at the start.
It's disgusting first few weeks.
I tell you.
It's so bad.
It was bad. I was like, oh man, nah, you just want to stay in bed. Don't want to get it. And the biggest thing for me when I first started, Will, was elevating my heart rate that early in the day because I just wasn't used to it. If I did any exercise in the morning, it was low intensity, steady state cardio. So getting to 160, 170 with my heart rate on like a leg day, first thing in the morning, was disgusting.
Yeah.
I felt like I was going to, my heart was going to jump out my chest.
After a decade of doing it the other way around.
Yeah, man.
But what an impactful, of all the life hacks, because obviously there's in the supplemental game, obviously we've got that covered. I formulate things to help in that respect. But in terms of lifestyle hacks that make the biggest change to so many hormones, 30% of your testosterone production is in that first block of REM sleep. Growth hormone production as well, massive pulse around bed in that, and it only responds to REM sleep and melatonin output. You have so much of your, sort of hormonal optimizing hinges on you sleeping well. Like to look and put that in numbers. Dr. Bill Campbell did some great work in this space as well, studying athletes and I guess the impacts that these things have on people. They found the difference between 6 hours sleep a night versus 8 hours sleep was 55% less fat loss. They also lost 60% more muscle.
Wow.
So if you look at it, like if you apply that to long term, people are chronically doing this, and it's remarkable. This was, and that's only 2 hours sleep. They also found hormonally, they found getting 8 hours instead of 6. That 2 hours sleep was the hormonal equivalent of putting guys on HRT.
Yeah.
Remarkably potent for testosterone. So a life hack straight away. Let's look at your sleep, and not just how long you're in bed. Let's look at the quality of it. Let's look at if you haven't got, if you've got a smartwatch or got any sort of device. Let's look at the data. Yeah. Where's your REM? How's it going? Gold standard, 20 to 25% of your sleep should be REM. So let's actually start tracking that. And then and that's the big thing I do. We shift people from more evenings, because we evolved to be active in the mornings. We were meant to get up, go out, hunt, gather, and do that at the start of the day. Yeah. Evening was never meant to have stimulus present. It was never, so it's when you start shifting things, like I had a friend of mine that I helped him with this diet on. He was on the same calorie intake, changed nothing, changed no macros. Literally all he did was went from PM to AM training. He was losing about a quarter of a kilo a week, good, steady, consistent loss, but about a quarter kilo a week. Recovery was lousy, and he was, broken sleep and just feeling garbage because he was stimming up at night after a big day at work. Flipped into morning training. Said, look, man, just do it. I said, I know you're going to bitch about it, but just do it for me one day. Just give it a try. He's, to his credit, stuck it through a week. He lost 3.8 kilos in the first week instead of a quarter of a kilo a week previously. No different macros, nothing. So that's when I went, holy shit, hormones are the thing that people should be looking at. And now when people, I always have a bit of unusual answers to people when they're asking for muscle building tips or fat loss. It's not, we have so many things in our society that ramp us up. We're always more stims, more work, go harder, faster. And it's been glorified now to work harder and longer. And, I guess it gets you places, but a lot of the time the answer when you're trying to get body composition changes to give your body in that parasympathetic state where it wants to rest and digest and rebuild and recover, do these anabolic things. You have to give it time. You have to put a lot of, pump it on the brakes, drive that sleep quality, cut stims out in the evening. And stimulants have a half-life of 4 to 5 hours. It takes 8 to 10 hours to eliminate them. Yeah. So, you're having caffeine at 1 p.m. That's only gone at 11 o'clock that night. So a lot of the time when we're looking at stimulants as well, pay respect to how long they last and cut those out a lot earlier in your day than you might have historically.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people are fighting that same cycle you had. They're sleeping crappy, so they're dragging ass throughout the day. More and more stimulants, which means more and more cortisol, which means worse and worse sleep.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is, mate. It perpetuates, and all of them work in cycles, right? Like so, your cortisol is self-perpetuating. Slow thyroid function is self-perpetuating. If you have a higher stress, also drives down testosterone. Low testosterone is associated with having a worse androgen ratio, so your estrogen to testosterone ratio is impaired. Higher estrogen is loaded to more cortisol. Stress lowers test, boosts estrogen. Higher estrogen boosts cortisol. Around and around it goes. And same with thyroid function. The higher estrogen then slows down your metabolism. Lower thyroid function is usually typical, associated with, again, more cortisol. So we end up with a big old loop. So these loops that were meant to keep us in perfect harmony, when we disrupt them by doing things in our lifestyle that are sort of against our programming, it really makes it nearly impossible for you to really achieve your health and fitness goals because you're really fighting against them. So like when I made a fat burner in the first place, it was always everyone else is jamming in as many stimulants as they can. They're going, let's go the thermogenic pathway. Let's really stimulate the shit out of your CNS, really get your natural nervous system, moving and burn more calories that way. And I'm like, but as soon as you check that cortisol up, that drives down your thyroid production. That really that binds up reverse T3. We're going at this the wrong way. That looking at it from a different lens. But the thyroid's 80% of your calorie burn. Why is no one helping that? Why has no one got iodine and commonly deficient nutrients? Why is everyone looking at ramping up an already ramped up population of people? A lot of people are using fat burners. We're probably active. We're probably training. We're probably doing cardio. They're already the type of personality type that are already really running hard at life. Usually, if you care about your health and fitness, usually the type of person who's, they're pretty motivated, pretty driven type people, you're probably already having a red hot crack in your personal life and work life. So to throw in more stimulants on top and more gas on the pedal, it's the opposite equation. Your hormones are just screaming. They haven't got a chance to catch their breath. And as a result, you see people with the crappy sleep quality and the foggy headedness and holding stubborn body fat around the lower stomach and lower back and not able to recover or build muscle mass. And you see all this sort of stuff where they just completely contradict their goals, but they're not aware of it until you really go stop and look.
It's one of those things, man, that is going to resonate with a lot of the listeners and a lot of the viewers because a lot of people who tune into the show are high achievers, right? Trying to level, like this is the podcast to provide you with the strategic and practical advice to help you level up, right? That's why you guys are listening to the show. And I think that it's very easy to fall into the trap of how do I get to the next level, right? In fitness, business, relationships, career, whatever fuck it is, I just work harder.
Do more.
Right? How do I get to the level after that? Work harder. How do I get to the level after that? Work harder. And that gets you, don't get it twisted, that gets you to certain levels.
It does.
But eventually you're going to hit a glass ceiling.
Something breaks.
Because you can't just keep hammering and expect to complete, not just even level up, but level up at the same speed at which that work ethic got you to, right? You're going to start whacking your head against this glass ceiling, just like I did with my training at night. I was like, I need to get my physique to the next level. Well, it's not just about working harder now. It's about stepping back and going, okay, what can I do that perhaps is a little bit counterintuitive, right? That isn't necessarily on the staircase of working harder. It doesn't necessarily look like that. But perhaps I'm on the wrong staircase. Maybe I need to go on this staircase now.
So looking at it, because if you
looking at it completely differently.
Definition of insanity, right? You've done it for a decade. Why do it again? But you want to make big changes, and we all do it a lot of the times with the jobs we don't like, with any particular parts in our routine. Like, I'm going to do the same thing on loop. And it'll get, I'll be drastically different in 6 months' time. Well, no, because the habits that got you here, like whenever someone asks, like when people are looking to build muscle or burn fat, it's become the person who's more muscular. What do their habits look like? What do the habits of a lean person look like? That's what I've had to change lately because I guess I get bogged down in the minutiae of looking at nutrient timing or hormonal influences, and I like to really go deep in these places, but a lot of the time I forget the bigger picture. I'm doing the same thing I've always done. I'm really not changing. The same sort of formula is there. So I guess a lot of the time it is flipping it on its head and looking for that. And what you need to do, a lot of times you have to change up what you're doing. If you're training at night and you've always done it, and you're getting what you think are half decent results, try it in the morning. So you go, do it for 2-3 weeks, and I guarantee you'll see a scale shift because you're working with your body's cortisol output. You're working in the right pattern. You're geared that way, and you're working with it. As soon as you start fighting it, your body starts, telling you pretty rudely, and you see it with less results, less muscle gain, less fat, less fat loss, and so that's why I started formulating that space, because it's such a dramatic impact when you start changing around these and working with the hormones instead of against them.
Yeah, 100%. I just want to disclaim real quick, because I don't want the listeners and the viewers to get the message a little bit convoluted, right? It's not, often people say, work smarter, don't work harder. Or work harder, don't work smarter, as if the two things are like mutually exclusive. What I'm saying, guys, is work as hard as you possibly can, right? And continue to work harder and harder and harder.
Yep.
But when you get to the point where the incremental increase in the hard work is not getting you the outputs that you're expecting to get, or not getting you the same sort of outputs that you were getting with those previous incremental increases, it's also time to start working smarter as well. You can do both at the same time. Yeah. So work hard, but then work smart as well. And sometimes that working smart is just getting out of the square that you're in, getting out of the box that you're in, stepping outside and going, okay, what changes can I make here that are going to allow me to do things a little bit differently and allow me to just really smash through this glass ceiling?
It is.
So, well, to finish off, I just want a real practical, right?
Yep.
Top 3 tips to optimize these hormones that we're talking about: thyroid, cortisol, testosterone, estrogen. What would your top 3 tips be?
Sleep is almost all 3, but sleep is literally worthy of all 3.
Yep.
Driving sleep quality. So first tip, track it, because you can't change what you don't know. So my first thing is to look at sleep and start having an idea of what it's looking like for you. So next thing is try and work to the best of your ability. Sometimes there are people who can't do this sort of things, but shift things around to start making the brunt of your work in the first half of the day. Ideally, that's a big one. So we're going to look at our sleep. We're going to make sure we're going to start tracking it and go, okay, cool. Like I mentioned earlier, 20 to 25% of your sleep should be REM sleep. So ideally, we're going to track it. We're going to get an idea of what's happening. We want to make, if it's not gold standard sleep, then we're going to look at that, either supplement it or start looking at the lifestyle hacks around that time. That's the big driver. Next thing is shifting activity in our day around to be more in line with what we're doing. So like you do with the morning training, that's a huge change. And it's something that's quite simple really, but it means that we're working with our body's natural sort of circadian rhythms, not against it.
Yep.
So that's a really big shifter that does a huge, profound impact on the other hormones, right? And then finally, focusing on the micro side of things more so than, with a lot of people, I often find that so many more people respond amazingly when you throw them on a super greens or a multivitamin, or than they do when they're tweaking nutrient timing with macros. Focus on the little details. Those macros are big. So look at micros as well as your macros. They're the ones. So nutritionally, really look at nutrient density. Okay, it's not just chicken, rice, nothing for every meal. You wonder why you feel like shit after a while. Look at these things. They pay dividends when you get to, and you've been doing it for as long as been doing it for a decade. You see it in longevity. So in terms of what your hormonal function and overall running better, micros, not just macros. It would be actually putting all of our athletic output and most of our hard work in the first half of the day. Big one. And then sleep. We need to make sure we're getting 20 to 25% of its REM sleep. If it's not, either supplement or start looking at your sleep hygiene at nighttime, cutting out all your blue light, cutting out as much light exposure as you can, no stimulants after probably 1, 2 p.m., really making that second half of the day all about more rest and digest in the evening, the most you can with your lifestyle.
Absolutely.
They're the 3 big levers.
And if there's one supplement, little shameless plug coming up, but we I mean, this is what you do for a living, right? So I need to ask you this question. If there's one supplement that the listeners and the viewers can consider taking that's going to help everything that we've just spoken about from a hormonal perspective, optimizing hormones to help them level up in all areas of life, what's the supplement and why?
Look, it's going to be metabolized, funnily enough, because it works on all 3.
Sure.
Thyroid side of things. So when I said micros, not macros,
I thought you were going to say restore there for a second.
I know I was.
Yeah,
and I flipped it on you because restore is one that I've had universally helpful for everyone. I have people using that in every walk of life.
And restore is your adrenal support supplement, right? Adrenal support, cortisol regulator, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's built for this. It's built to help with all those impacts that stresses have on our bodies. And it's by all means, it's the big lever mover when people are trying to, if any of those symptoms were sounding familiar before with the tired but wired and the crappy sleep quality and everything, if any of that's sounding familiar, Restore is 100% beneficial. Where I see metabolizers having a perk is that I see that a lot of people with the nutrient side of things.
Yeah.
All right. So a lot of people are deficient in very common nutrients that are very important for your body to function. Magnesium, 70% of people are deficient in magnesium. Iodine. In Australia, we're very old, back to the geology background, we have very old nutrient, like poor soils because we're tectonically very stable. So like what you'd rather have in there is have the actual key nutrients that you need. So iodine, selenium, zinc, methyl B12, methylated B vitamins. These are things like those key nutrients are what pretty much your entire HPT axis runs on. A lot of your hormones depend on those as cofactors for production.
Yeah.
So the Restore 1,000%. And if anyone has a take home at all, just using Restore before bed will drive that sleep quality, help with all that growth hormone production, testosterone production, optimizing heaps of stuff. I did a bit of a flip though on it with Metabolize, just because I think that equally important lately, getting people thinking in that mindset of, hey, what am I actually taking in a day to help my body do these things I'm asking for it?
Yeah.
I'm training at a high, a lot of our listeners are high octane people. They're driven, they're A-type personalities. They're really having a go at life. So what are you doing to your body? Are you putting premium in or are you putting E10 in each day? Let's give it the resources to do what you're asking of it, and that's where that comes in. And I guess a lot of those are very thyroid focused nutrients. And a lot of people, when we're stressed, we're impairing our metabolism isn't working optimally. So I guess as a default, it's very much a thyroid support product, but those nutrients are really crucial too. So if you've got one thing that covers your thyroid, covers adrenal, and also micronutrient status, that's an all-in-one sort of guy. So yeah, fun enough, Restore all day long, but Metab I really love as a bit of the underdog that will help with like just the whole picture. So
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, man.
Pleasure.
It's been an awesome chat. We've covered a whole lot of ground. I always love geeking out on supplements, and
Always fun,
I don't get to do it too often, right? So it's good, and I know the listeners enjoy that as well. Most people who subscribe to the show have come through Massive Joe's at some point, so they're usually big supplement geeks to a certain level as well. Man, guys, the one thing that we ask in return for this show, if you have found value in this episode, and I'm sure that you have because we've covered so much ground, from business to career to starting business to continued success in business to hormone supplementation,
Lifestyle hacks, we've done work ethic, we've done it all.
If you guys have found value in this episode, the one thing that we ask in return is that you share the show. You can share it any way you want, person to person. You can open up your window and scream it at your neighbors. The one way that we really appreciate, because we get to see it as well, is if you take a screenshot of whatever podcasting platform you're listening on at the moment, take that screenshot, post it in your Instagram story, and tag myself at Joseph Mencel. Tag Will. What's your handle, Will?
Will_primer.
Yeah.
Or at Primabolics. Either way, we'll be sharing this content because it's a really nice platform to be able to get some more. Hopefully, put a lot of value out today.
Absolutely.
With a lot of those lifestyle hacks too.
Absolutely. So at Will_primer and at Primabolics, at Joseph Mencel, throw those tags down in your Instagram story. Will and myself will see them, and we like to reshare those shares to spread the love around. Everyone likes a little cosign, so so that's pretty cool. Will, thank you so much once again. Thank you guys for tuning in. You could have been anywhere in the world right now, but you're here with us. We appreciate that. Until next time, we'll catch you on the flip side. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Fitness Times Business Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, and if you enjoyed listening to this episode, make sure you give us a 5-star rating. Until next time, we'll catch you on the flip side.